Next step is to make it so that patrons can pick up the drinks, get rid of the one that's on the counter, and then play an animation for them to drink it. There's a couple steps to this. We need to first make a patron that we can put in a slot, as well as making those slots on the bar. The bar has its own collision shape and all of that, but what we can do is create an additional scene called just like a bar slot, and we can place 6 of those, and then those will define both where the patron will go, like behind the bar, the sprite of the bar, as well as the collision zone for knowing if a beer or a drink stops in that zone so that they can drink it. What we'll do first is we will start with the patron. We'll zoom in on them. We'll do some animations because the art department has gotten those animations out to us. To do this, we want to switch this type to an animated sprite 2D. That all went away. We're just going to add in these frames to an animation. So we created a sprite frame object in our animated sprite 2D. We're not going to make this one a node and all of that because all they really need to do is move, have an animation. They don't need a collision zone or anything. They're just going to pop into slots when they get close enough. To make animations, what I do is put a regular old animation in there, add your sprites to it. You start with a default. To make an animation, you would create your sprite frames here, and then I usually use the default for like an idle, so we're just going to do that single frame. Since we're not doing too complex of animations due to the scope and time frame of this minigame, we're just going to be doing individual keyframes basically, so we're not doing like smooth animations. It's like keyframes. We'll add another animation in here for patron drink. So that's going to, oops, there we go. Sprite frames. We're going to pull the idle and the drink. And I believe that's what we have here. So if we like play that, we kind of have the keyframes there. 5 frames per second is a little much. So if we do like 2, that looks good. Kind of shows like it'll appear and go away, and do that like 3 times or something and then call it good. So they'll play this animation. What we can actually do here is select both of these frames and duplicate them. We'll just copy and paste them a couple times. That way the animation is just that many. We say play that animation. We can detect when that animation is done and then move on from there. What we actually want to do here is add a script for our patron. And instead of having everything outside of the patron call like play and do all that, we will add a function called drink, and then we can play, give it our animation name. It's currently called new animation. Let's rename that to drink. We'll rename default. We'll keep default the way it is. And then we'll play animation called drink. And then we should have a signal in the animated. Yeah, we're going to make it so this doesn't loop. And there should be a signal in the animated sprite 2D. So animation finished. So we played drink. And then we're going to link up a signal in here. So for those who aren't aware, we haven't actually used any of these yet. This is a signal in Godot. You can connect nodes with signals. You connect them to other nodes. You can connect them to themselves. And so we're actually going to right click on this and connect animation finished to a function called onAnimationFinished. That animation will detect if current animation, I believe. Nope. So we'll have to go to documentation to see exactly what the properties are. There's like a current animation it's just called animation. We're going to then check if the animation equals drink. And if we finish the drink animation, for now, we're just going to print a line that says finished drinking. As long as we are playing the drinking animation, we don't want to replay it. So if something outside of it says like drink a billion times in a row, we only want one drinking animation to play at a time, because otherwise you're going to get stuck on that first frame and it'll look like it's not playing the animation, but what's happening is it's restarting it over and over and over again. So we're going to say in here if animation equals drink, oops, don't know why I did that, and playing, then if animation is drink and is playing, then we don't want to play the animation, put an else in there, and then if that's happening, we're just going to print just as some feedback to say already drinking, in case there's something we want to do there in the future. But we might flip that logic around just to check that it's not playing or that it's not on the drink animation. But right now, we'll leave it like that. The logic's a little backwards, but it gets the same thing done as what I described. Now, we can have the bar. That's everything for the patron drinking. So when they're sitting there, they're just idle, and then when they come by for a drink, It'll play and they'll bloop, 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 and then they'll be done. What we actually want to do is copy this frame and make it 6 frames so that it ends on a non-drinking animation. And we can get rid of that first frame so that it plays through 1, 2, 3, and then is done. So that's the patron. We'll go ahead and put that up to GitHub. And what we should have done before we push that up to GitHub was actually test it. So easy way to test it here is to just call the drink function on ready. So when it shows up in the scene, just have them automatically drink. So everybody should start drinking when the game starts. That's kind of cool. We'll remove that since that was just for testing. We didn't want to commit that in anyway, so that's totally fine. Now we need to work on the bar. We're going to add some things to the bar here. So we have it centered. Mostly the collision shape is a little off. I think what I can do is decrease the size of that. Probably good like that so that they sort of fall off. We'll save that. And then what we want to do now is add in a node 2D as kind of a placeholder in a way. This will allow us to create a series of slots. What we want to do is then add another, whoops, we want to attach a script. We want to add a child node, node 2D to that. So this is going to be bar slots, and then this will be a bar slot. This bar slot, we are going to we'll actually make this an area 2D. So an area 2D will allow us to make some signals happen, catch some signals when things enter the area. Making it an area 2D will also allow us to have that spot where the patron should get centered to, so that they look like they do now in the main playground scene. I'll show you what I mean there, where we want to add area, let's see. Yeah, we'll go ahead and add an area 2D to the node 2D, and then we'll also add a marker 2D to that, so that the bar slot can have a center point, but then the area and the marker 2D can be wherever they need to be, just so that like the marker 2D isn't a child of the area 2D and could get messy. So then that area 2D needs a collision shape. That's what that warning symbol is. And then this collision shape needs a shape. We're going to make that shape a rectangle. And that rectangle, we're going to make the width of our patrons, which is 64. Thinking about the spacing between the patrons, we wanted to make the spacing between them 72 pixels. Well, 64, each with 8 pixels between them. What would probably work out is to make the X width of each slot 72 so that each slot is directly next to each other. That's a possibility. Or because the drinks are 20 pixels across, they might overlap on patrons. And so we're just going to have to consider that in the future. So if you get a drink in between patrons and it's in both patrons like zone, I'm trying to think how we might want to do that. I think the best way to do it would be, let's put a patron in here and see what it looks like. That's actually really wide. How big is this? It's 64 by 64, but their sides don't go all the way to the 64. So this would actually make way more sense to make this area 2D a bit smaller. Each patron slot we originally had is 64, and then we spaced it out basically 72 between each spot that they're sitting at, and we want to have at least 20 pixels between them. So like if you get a drink between patrons and it's not like right in their spot, they may not grab it. I think that that'd be kind of neat. But we can try that out. We can always expand it out to be that 72, but that could cause issues where like if a beer is on 2 different slots, we might have to implement some logic to determine who gets the drink. So we'll actually reduce this by 20, so we'll make it 52, and that actually looks pretty good because then it kind of makes sense that like be able to reach a little further and grab it. So we'll go ahead and move that collision area. Let's see, we've got the area 2D here. The bar slot is fine where it is. We're going to put that in the center of the bar, or the middle of the bar in terms of Y coordinates. We are going to increase this area 2D. We're going to increase that. Let's see what 32 looks like. Yeah, that's the full height of the bar for 32 pixels. And that way it's just a whole section for the patron. So I can get rid of this patron now. And then the marker 2D, we actually want to, oh yeah, we do want the patron in here because we're going to put the patron as a child of marker 2D. set that transform to 0. So this is as if it was spawned in and placed on that marker 2D. We want to use this as patron, we'll call it patron seat, patron position. And then this is drink area. So if a drink lands in the drink area, then they'll get it, but we'll go ahead and move this up. I'm going to move the bar slots behind just so we can move this patron position properly. So we have the move on. And we're not showing the wrists below the bar. Yep, so that's correct. So we're going to move that sprite 2D back there, and we can now get rid of the patron because they're going to be in the right position when they go on that marker 2D. So we have our bar slots, node 2D, that's kind of a container for all of them, and then we have each bar slot. What we're going to do is we are going to now space things out. If we look at this, our bar is at, don't actually quite know the global position there. Okay, so the X position is at 319 and this patron here is at 152. So we just need to plug that in here for this bar slot. What we're going to do first before we move this is we're going to leave it at 0, 0, and we're going to turn this into its own scene because we want to be able to edit all bar slots by editing the original scene. So now we have a bar slot scene, and we can make that position as 152 minus, because this is how far back from the center it'll be. So in theory, that's going to be right about where he's at. Yeah, it looks close enough. And now all we need to do is just instantiate a bunch of bar slots. So we've got bar slot there. We can actually duplicate these. We're doing a spacing of 72 between each. So we're going to have minus 167 plus 72. We duplicate that one and we just go down the line. Make 6 of these because that's how many we have over there. There we go. Looks about right. So we'll go ahead, add all those in. We've got our bar slots. Each bar slot has its marker and all of that. And we can go into the scene if we want. It's easier to see it all from the bar here. Move on to the next step, which is getting a patron to sort of like lock into that spot. So we need to be able to assign a patron to a spot, and that means that we are going to need to be able to add a child. It would be a lot easier if the center point of the bar slot was where the patron would sit, because we wouldn't need to use that marker 2D anymore. What we would need to do is just add the patron as a child and then set their position to 0, because then they'll be centered on the center of the bar slot. So we'll go in here and remove that marker 2D, and this is where it's really convenient to have all of these things as the same scene. So we'll just use our keys here to bring it all the way down. That's the center there, and we're gonna have to move things around on the bar, but that's fine. We just delete patron position there. What we actually want to do, because we have the center in the right place, we want to move the, is that slightly off center? I think that is. There we go. Now we're centered. What we want to do is just move the area 2D down. So we're going to select everything and move them down until the patron position lines up with the bar slot center point, and then we'll adjust everything on the bar accordingly. Bring this all down. We're lined up. For the purposes of this game, this is how we're going to do it. Just a little simpler. Don't have to think about nearly as many moving pieces. Oh, this is great, actually. This is where we can see if we have everything in the right place, which we don't. So we need to grab all of these, move them up, and then also move them over. They need to move over how much further? So we can go in here to editable children, so we can then see where these bar slots are at. It looks like they're off by, let's that, minus 144 and minus 152. So what we're going to have to do then is take these and move them, what is that, 8 pixels to the right? This should put them right on top. Oh, I believe we missed by a little bit somehow. That bar slot 136. What is the patron's center point? 180. Oh, because we're part of the patrons here, and that's all local coordinates. So we just need to adjust this kind of manually. This isn't really like best way to go about it, but move a couple pixels back, save that, see if it's centered. That looks almost centered, so we're going to go 1 more pixel, and boom, there we go. Now we're centered. Everything lines up, and we can get rid of these editable children. Okay, so that will look the way we intend it to at the bar here. For the purposes of what we're doing right now, we don't need to put any logic in to make patrons show up and get into the slots. We can do that later. What we can do right now is make it so that patrons can pick up the drink and drink them. And so we're going to have them sort of not hard-coded, but more or less for lack of a better term, hard-coded into the bar section. So we're just going to go into each one of these and add a patron. And that patron is going to show up like that. We actually just need to move bar slots like that. And now they'll be behind this bar here. And we can always see them by highlighting like that. Now we just add a patron to each one. Go through and do that. Okay. So we have all our patrons there. They are looking pretty good in each slot. And all these collision shapes will work as they need to. Unfortunately, we can't really like see them right here. I think if we go into debug and we say visible collision shapes, it might overlay on each other. Let's go ahead and just give that a look. We go into playground. Yeah, they're not going to show up here, but potentially when we play with that, no. Okay, so we won't see those collision shapes. So what we can actually do here is we can say bar slots, their collision shape. We can just make those up on layer 1, and so they'll always show up. For now, that's how we're going to do the visibility. And it's just visibility. It's not like, or it's ordering, so it's not going to affect necessarily any like functional things at this point. But yeah, so we have all the patrons there. When they have a drink that goes into the bar slot, we need to add some logic in there. So if we add a script here, bar slots, we need to connect a signal of when the area is entered and exited by a node. So node 2D here, the body entered. We're going to connect both on drink area body entered and on drink area body exited. Each of these is going to help us track a drink that is in the area. We want to have an array of drinks. We're going to start with it being empty. And if a drink enters the body, the area, then we want to do drinks append that body. And if it exits, we want to do drinks.erase that body. So that way, if a drink is in the area, it'll be added. If it exits, it will get removed. Because when we have it added to that area, we want to now create a signal so the drink knows when it stops. Like when it has 0 movement, we'll have it give a signal that says stopped. And when the drink stops, it will notify connected nodes. You'll see what I mean in a second. That's all set up. That's ready to go. We'll be able to track whatever drinks are in the zone. Now let's go over and make it so that drinks and bar slots and all that can interact. So drinks are on layer 1 when it comes to collisions. And we want to detect the drink entering the area with a collision layer. We'll also add the drink to layer 2, and we can name these layers also. We go over to these 3 dots, edit the names, and we'll just do drinks. We won't even name layer 1. Don't need to. Can't think of a name, so we won't. To enter that area, we just, oh, that's the bar slot. Go to drink area, and we make it observe layer 2. So when that drink enters the area, we can tell because it's looking for layer 2 collisions, and so it'll detect a like collision with the drink. It won't cause it to like physics out or anything, but what it'll do is know that it's there, add it to the drinks array. We also know exactly what it is. We'll add something in drink, which is a custom signal. So we add a signal here and we'll call it stopped. When our linear velocity is greater than 0, we're applying the drag, but when it's not greater than 0, we're setting to 0, which means it's effectively stopped. We're going to try to identify when it stops. What we're going to say in here is stopped, if is stopped, if not is stopped. So if we're not stopped, then we want to emit the signal of stopped, and then set is stopped to true. And I kind of did this a little backwards because we don't have a variable called is stopped. We just add that in. Now that we've established this is stopped variable, it will be able to be used here. And so if a drink stops, it's going to emit that signal. Normally when you have a, like we saw, where is it? Here, the drink area, normally when you have it in your scene tree, you can have a node and connect a signal from that node to something else. So for the drink area, we actually connected its own signal to itself. What we need to do is actually manually connect a signal based on the drink entering that body. We're going to filter things a little bit. We're going to say if body is drink. So this is where that class name comes in handy again. Then we append it to that. For the erasing from the array, we don't care if it's not a drink, because if it's not in the array, it won't try to erase it, or it won't do anything. We don't care about checking if it's a drink. We only care about checking if it's a drink if we're adding it to the array of drinks. So now that we're filtering bodies as if they're to check if they're drinks, we know it's a drink. So we know that it has a signal there. So we're going to do drink dot stopped, which is the signal. Oops, sorry, body dot stopped dot connect. So this is how we manually connect a signal, and then we need to connect it to a function, and that's going to be a function that we will create, and let's call it on drink stopped. Now we have that ready to connect to our function here, so we'll make another function down here called on drink stopped, put itself in there. So we'll do drink required to be type drink on going in there, and then we will have a drink queue that we just drink through as they get in front of them. That'll also be empty, and we can add this to the drink queue when it stops in front. So now we know that those drinks have stopped in front of the player. There's a drink queue in the slot, and we'll be able to have the slot communicate with the patron to know if there's a drink in the queue so they can take it. At all times, the patron will be calling a function, either all times or periodically calling a function to see if there are any drinks in the drink queue. Before we get around to that, if we just look through this really quick, we're now saying, okay, well, this is connected, but what if it leaves and then it stops? Isn't that signal going to happen? So that's where we actually want to check here if the body is a drink. We have to disconnect that signal. Now, I don't remember how to disconnect signals, so I'm going to look it up. Disconnect is the way to do it. Disconnects a signal by name from a given callable. Just go for disconnect body.stopped from on drink stopped. So in theory, that should work as expected, and we will see. So let's go ahead and see if that worked. So what we should see is, since we have the debug on, we can spawn a drink, send it, and now we're seeing an error on disconnect, and we're seeing a issue with string versus string name. So argument 1 from signal to string name. Oh, okay, so this is having some issues. Disconnect has to happen. I'll have to do some more reading on disconnect. Okay, so after doing a little bit of reading, the disconnect function is part of signal. So we want to go in, and instead of doing disconnect like this, we do body.stopped.disconnect, and then we put in the callable, which is on drink stopped. And that should fix that. There, we sling it down, and then it stopped there. So patron 1, 2, 3, 4 should be the one that has the drink. We're going to go to bar top because they're actually overlaid on each other right now. So we have drinks. We got one drink on the bar top. Go to the bar. There's bar slots. 1, 2, 3, 4. Drink area should have bar slot has drink queue of 0. So something didn't work. See what happened? I think I know what happened, which is we need to make it so that it can pass itself in here, which might actually just be on the end of the drink. Stopped, emit, and then put self in there. So this passes itself in, so when it does its signal, the bar slot should get the drink like that. Refresh that, and we're not seeing it. So yeah, we need to figure out why or how to connect a signal manually and make it so that the drink can pass itself in through there, because that's really important. So let's go ahead and debug this a little bit. I'm gonna hit play. We put a breakpoint on when it should emit the signal. It emits it immediately. So that's why we have that issue. Immediately on spawn is when it emits the signal, so we need to fix that. We're gonna go ahead and stop the play. So this is where we do need to say by default it is stopped, but when you slide, that's when stopped becomes false. So now we see that signal emit, and then it properly goes into the drink queue. And we can see, if we go into the remote, this is everything that's in the play space that's going on right now. If we look at bar slot 4, actually bar slot 1 is the one that has it. Drink queue, we have the drink in the queue. That was what was going on. We had some weirdness going on with when we were sending that signal out, and it only sends it once, because once we set it to false, or once we set is stopped to true, we don't set it to false again, unless we were to like slide it again, but that isn't supported right now. The next thing is, for the patron to drink through the queue of drinks in the bar slot. Let us figure out how we want them to drink through that queue. They're going to be a child of the bar slot. And this is where I think if we detect that we're going to have the patron ask the bar slot if there's any drinks. We'll do function get drink if drink queue is not empty. So if not drink queue is empty, then we say drink queue, not drinks, drink queue dot front. We're going to pop front. So pop front will erase it from the queue as well as give us the front one in the queue, the first one that was in. So it's first in, first out array management for this queue. It doesn't really matter too much, but it's basically going to be the rightmost beer from our perspective, rightmost drink from our perspective. And so we actually just want to return that. But if it's empty, we don't return anything. So that'll just end up being null. So all we have to do here is patron. When they sit down at a spot, we need to have them basically be assigned their slot. So we want to export variable of bar slot, and we actually want to make bar slot a class name. So this bar slot here, since we have this script, we're going to just make the bar slot class, and that way our patron can be assigned bar slot. Then go out to the bar, look at our patron here. For some reason that's not showing up. I think I need to try reloading the project, see if that helps. So now that we've reloaded the project, we can see if, yeah, there we go. Now we have bar slot showing up as a thing that the patron can have. So at the bar, for now, we're just going to manually assign each patron to their slot. This is a little bit of a manual process, but for the scope of the game we're doing, it's okay to do this. You can always make it programmatic, which means like does it on its own and all that in the future, but we don't really care about that right now. So patron, if bar slot, we will actually do that later because we want to make it so patrons can like leave and come in and all that. If it has a bar slot and the bar slot, we are going to try to grab a drink. Not every process frame, that would spam things a lot. So what we actually want to do here is set the process back to that, and we're going to give the patron a timer. Add a timer. This is going to be the drink timer. And we'll put the drink timer on, let's say, a half second. It's not a one shot and it's not an auto start. What we're going to do is on ready, we are going to start the drink timer. We're going to manually reference it here, or like directly reference it. That's fine. At the moment, we're just trying to get this done. And then we want to connect a signal from the timer, the timeout signal, connect that up to patron. And on drink timer timeout, if bar slot if animation not equal to drink, or we're not playing an animation. So basically, if we're not currently drinking and there's a bar slot, we're gonna try to grab a drink. If the bar slot gives us a drink, we don't actually care to grab the actual drink object. We just want it to remove that drink from the queue. Actually, no, we do want the drink. We do want to grab the drink so that we can free it. We're going to create a variable of drink. That'll be equal to if we have a drink there, or if we get it from the bar slot. So if we have a drink, then we want to free that drink. So we'll do that queue free. If that drink is a drink, queue free it. Yep, we're able to call that function properly, and we will play our drink animation. So in theory, this should work right out the gate. Yeah, that seemed to work. So I just got to clean it up a little bit. And that is if we don't even want to check if it's stopped. We actually just we don't need a signal to tell us when the drink stops. We just need to check if its velocity is 0 to determine that it has stopped. Because we don't want to just be able to chuck drinks all the way down the bar and then people just take them. We want to have to like curling like style, like pop it right into their slot. So we'll go back to, I believe bar slot here is the one that connected all those. Yeah, so we're not going to connect those signals. What we're actually going to do is, actually, yeah, we are going to do that. We want to keep connecting the signals, and instead of, yes, because if you ever have drag applied at any point, you want to undo, we're going to say that we are not stopped. Yep. Okay, so we don't need is stopped on false there. It's just if the drink ever has drag applied to it, we'll consider it stopped. So in this case, well, sent those a little too far. This guy's got 4 drinks. Should go through the queue. Yep, it's just drinking every single one. That's really cool to see. And there we go. Yeah, we run into 0. So if drink and that drink is a drink. So if we have a drink and that drink is a drink, we'll free it and then we'll try to drink. So I'll try that again. Done. So we'll just throw a bunch of drinks down the bar, do some testing. Still having issues with it. This is a weird bug. I'm going to debug this one a little bit and come back. Okay, that was a little bit of a silly one. What was happening was my drinks were, it's kind of like a multifold issue. So for some reason, drinks you can see in here when they get thrown and you have like a bunch of them. Sometimes you'll see drinks sort of creep backwards. There's multiple times where drinks will do that, and we'll need to fix that eventually. But to get this bug out of the way and work on other functionality before we go back and do like little fixes like that, those drinks that sort of creep backwards, or sometimes they'll just like emit the signal multiple times that they've stopped. And so the logic was it was just appending the drink to the drink queue, but it wasn't checking if the drink was already in the queue. So we're adding in multiple instances of the same drink to the drink queue. And so when you freed it, when it was popped off the front, instances to itself were still in the drink queue that were then returned, and you're trying to reference a drink in the queue that didn't exist. And it was freed, which is even worse than like null, because it's like, oh yeah, this is an instance of something that we're referencing, and then you try to do something with it, and it runs into that error. So that's what was going on there. We will move forward. We have right now, I need to erase this from the patrons, delete that, and we'll leave that patron like node 2D there. But so now we have people at the bar who will just drink the beers as they show up, as they stop in front of them. And we're still hitting the issue. I'll be back. Okay, I think I figured the issue out. Try to move forward, but as you can see, these drinks are piling up. We're not running into the issue, and I believe what it was that when a drink exited the zone, because you can hit drinks out of the drinking zone, we didn't clear that one from the drink queue, so somebody else drank it, but then they thought it was still in front of them, and then it ran into the same issue. So that's what was going on there, I believe. Always a process of seeing if I am proven wrong, but that's just how we improve. With that, we've got drinks. You can toss down the bar. People will drink them as they get in front of them, and that is pretty good so far.